Testing. Good morning. If we could please take our seats. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Gillison. I always can count on my buddy. I think it's on. You can't hear me, Bob? Really? Usually I don't even need a mic. Okay. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Joyce Campbell. I am a judge in the city of Fairfield in Butler County, Ohio, and I'm currently president of NAMI Ohio Board, and I am first vice president of the NAMI National Board. Thank you for that honor and privilege. On behalf of the board and the staff, we welcome you here today to the 2022 NAMI Annual Meeting and Conference. The agenda, as you might well imagine, is very packed, and we're going to try and stay on time today. The trains will run on time today. I would ask all of you to please take out your phone, turn off the volume. If you want to play Candy Crush, you need to do it quietly. Today, I am so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be with all of you. It's been so long. Today, this conference, we're going to recognize those living with mental illness and their families. We are here to continue to insist, now Terry would say scream, but I'm going to say insist, that the mental health system provide the services our loved ones need and they deserve. I am thrilled this morning to introduce you and present Jean Johnson to perform the national anthem. Jean is a former NAMI Ohio board member who left us for Detroit. And it has become a tradition for the last few years to ask Jean to perform the national anthem at our events. And in a moment, if you've not heard her, you'll know why. So, Miss Jean. On their lapel that we can all... Bob, you got your tie. Stand up, dude. Where'd Spada go? Bob has a flag tie.
Mr. Spada, you have a flag tie, sir. We can improvise.
All right, and here's our flag. Thank you to Mr. Keller.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? You nailed it.
See why? All right, couple housekeeping things. If anyone has questions about the hotel shuttles, stop at the registration desk and ask for Zach, all right? The Wi-Fi for this room, so that you can get to the next level of Candy Crush, is Hilton Head, no, that's Hilton Head, that's Dreaming of Hilton Head. Hilton Honors Meeting, and the password is Gemini, Gemini, all lowercase. So Hilton Honors Meeting, Gemini is your password, okay? All right. To open this meeting, we thought it would be nice for each of you to hear 4 of our current NAMI Ohio board members speak to you about what NAMI means to them. These are 4 tenured board members, 2 family members, and 2 living with mental illness. I am extremely proud of each of them, and I'm proud to introduce them to you if you've not met them. You'll first hear from Quentin Monden, then Ann Walker, then Jessica Schmitt, and then Eric McKee. So let's start with Quentin.
So what NAMI has meant to me condenses down into 3 things. Initially, NAMI meant support for me about, several years ago when I attended my first NAMI Connection Recovery Support Group. I felt nervous, unsure, but hopeful that attending that meeting, I would find support, understanding, and compassion. NAMI at that time only meant a support group to me. After coming out of undergraduate studies with a lot of uncertainty and feeling isolated. Several years later, NAMI would mean education. Education in the form of peer-to-peer classes where I got to learn about what my depression and anxiety was, how it affected me, how it impacted my interactions, the way I was experiencing the world. But finally, and most importantly, NAMI has come to mean community. Community really in the support of a lot of NAMI mommies, NAMI uncles, cousins, friends, people who I would eventually come to hold very dear as a second family. And so now I stand here as a board member, as a state trainer, but also as a friend, and now as the support that I initially received when I came to this organization. And so I'm very thankful to be able to give that back. And it all started by going to a support group. So thank you.
I don't do as well speaking off the cuff, so I will be reading this. And of course, I need my glasses for that. I'm Ann, and I am here for some of the same reasons that you are here. We all share living with a mental illness, whether it is our own, that of a friend, a child, a parent, or another relative. My son was diagnosed over 25 years ago with schizoaffective disorder. My husband and I were devastated. We don't talk about mental illness as much as we should nowadays, but in the mid-90s, it was even less of a topic for a polite dinner time conversation. Because our friends didn't know what to say or how to help, many of them avoided us. I remember one friend going the opposite way in the grocery store, because if she'd asked me how I was, I would tell her. Do you remember how frightening it was the first few years after a diagnosis? Well, NAMI was there for us. From the very first meeting we went to, we met family members who knew what it was like to be broadsided by this mean illness. People living with mental illness in our community reached out and helped us understand what our son was experiencing. He wasn't willing to admit having schizoaffective disorder, and he did not want to talk about it with us. NAMI's family-to-family course was our life raft and gave us tools to communicate with our son, his psychiatrist, and his case managers. It also encouraged us to be open about our situation, more so than we already had been, and to advocate for better understanding and treatment of the mentally ill. Our support group, which is still going and which I still attend after 25 years, is a way to give back a little bit, but also to know that sometimes things go up and down when you least expect them to. And so I need that support group. NAMI is our family. You understand, you care, you get it. Although our son is managing his illness well, he's married and he has a job, I am still sad that he has to deal with symptoms that pop up, medication changes, and the stress of not always understanding people's intentions. He's very bad at reading faces. I'm grateful for all the wonderful people in NAMI who have helped us keep our heads above water. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Jessica Schmitt Hartman. What does NAMI mean to me? Hope. Hope for the future. My grandmother worked very hard as a board member in Wood County to grow our affiliate's presence. She did this for her son that's living with schizoaffective disorder. My mother helped tremendously in a variety of ways with finances, leading peer support groups, leading peer programs, leading family programs. Lots of our family members wear many hats. I have carried the torch as the executive director of Wood County for 13 years now, and will continue to do so because I am now, as Quentin said, a NAMI mommy. My son is bright, he's loving, and he's always wearing a smile on his face. He makes me proud. But sometimes his feelings are bigger than him. I want better supports and more acceptance for my child, better than what the generations before him had. And that is what NAMI means to me.
Good morning. How are you all today? Yeah? My name is Eric McKee, and I am from Findlay, Ohio. I was born a golden child in my parents' eyes, my grandparents' eyes. Many teachers said that I would go great distances and make a big difference in this world. Depression told me otherwise. My first year in college, I had my first episode where I stopped right at the entrance of my classroom, dropped my books, and bolted. The next thing that I remembered was two paramedics standing over me asking me what my name was and if I was okay. I felt ashamed. I felt worthless. I felt hopeless. I thought my life was over. It took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree. I have started 3 master's programs to which I've been unable to finish. Terry asked me to talk about why I am here. I am here because NAMI literally saved my life. I started off on Zoloft. I ended with electroconvulsive therapy and everything in between, all the psychotropic medications that you could think of, any type of combination of those that you could come up with would work maybe 6 weeks, maybe 6 months, maybe a year and a half. But inevitably, things had to change every time. I went through many different therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy, putting a rubber band on my wrist and snapping it when I had negative thoughts, and any other therapy that was available. Then I was told that I had treatment-resistant depression, and the only thing that we had left was ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. And then NAMI came. I was asked by a friend if I would allow my face to be projected on a 3-story wall talking about what it means to live with a mental illness. And because she was my great dear friend, I said, sure, I'll do that. Do you realize how frightening it is to see your face on a 3-story screen? I'm not embarrassed to say that you could see all of my pores. Although I was told that my makeup was not good. But through this depression, and after one suicide attempt, there happened to be a young lady there who was on the NAMI staff, the NAMI Ohio staff, that pulled me aside after she watched, and in spite of my open pores, asked me if I would be willing to apply to this board. And I said yes. And my life has changed dramatically since then. I am here because NAMI saved my life. I am here today because NAMI educated my loved ones, my support groups, my friends, my neighborhood, my schools, my community, my state, and yes, indeed, my nation. I am here because NAMI supported me unjudgmentally, unconditionally, and despite any misgivings I may have about whether it would work, whether I could trust them. They were there 100% of the time and still are. I am here because NAMI offered me a platform to which I could then reach out, tell my story, but more importantly, tell the story of those people who cannot speak for themselves. Each and every one of you in here today has that possibility to reach out and speak for those who cannot. And I beg you to continue to do that. Through In Our Own Voice, I've been able to touch many lives. I've been able to help bust the stigma of what it means to live with a mental health condition. To be able to break the stigma for those loved ones who for some reason are put in positions where they are by themselves and left alone to fend all of the obstacles that are put in our way to keep those of us with a mental illness in the shadows, quiet, packed away somewhere. I am here because NAMI gave my mental illness purpose and meaning. The mental illness I did not ask for, I did not pursue. It was given to me. And with that is a great responsibility. Every time that I'm able to talk about what I have gone through, what my family has gone through, enables someone else to push through the next day. It gives resiliency to those of us who struggle and those of us who support those who struggle. I am here today because NAMI gifted me a life worth living. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Whew. Thank all of our speakers. Thank you for speaking from the heart. It is with great pleasure, and I do mean with great pleasure, that I would now like to introduce Dan Gillison. Dan stepped into his role as the NAMI National CEO in January of 2020. He has led this organization through a worldwide pandemic with grace and humility, and always, always, always with the mission of NAMI first and foremost. Dan has a strong passion for advocating for people with mental illness and several years of experience in the nonprofit leadership world. Before coming to NAMI, Dan led the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, the APAF, where he was responsible for strategic planning, personnel management, board communications, oversight of their public education programs and outreach, and formulating strategic alliances and partnerships to further the APAF's mission. Prior to the APAF, Mr. Gillison led County Solutions and Innovation for the National Association of Counties, also known as NACO, where he was instrumental in repositioning the organization's programs to provide expertise in health and human services, justice, and public safety. Dan holds a BA from Southern University and A&M College. Dan spearheaded the creation of the CEO Alliance for Mental Health in 2020, which represents some of the most vulnerable and diverse populations affected by disparities in the mental health care system. The Leadership Collective has collaborated to identify and amplify their priorities for creating a future of quality mental health care for all who need it. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Dan Gillison.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. How's everybody doing? This introduction was just incredible. Thank you so very much. I'm just old. In terms of what I have in terms of the comments today, let me just start out by saying your theme, rest and reset. Rest and reset. I think the fellowship that you'll have here and the opportunity to reset is incredible. I would also tell you that there's no mistakes. And in these times, I don't know if Terry knows this, but this is my first state conference that I'm being able to attend in person. So it's no mistake that it's Ohio. No mistake that it's Ohio, Terry. Now, the other thing I'll tell you as I begin my comments is I wanted it to be a PowerPoint-free zone, but I want you to also be proud of what we're doing on your behalf. So we do have a few slides and a video or two to show you, very short, what we call sizzle reels. I would also say it's no mistake of me being here from the standpoint of as a young man growing up. I told the judge last night and a few that we were having dinner with that I didn't think about it until I got here. That growing up, my mom, we grew up in Washington, D.C., but my mom would say to my dad, hey, I want to take the boys to go visit family. And he was just a workaholic and worked 2 jobs to put us through school, so he was always working. So he said, hey, they're out for summer school. Go ahead and take them. And she would take us over to my grandmother's house, put us in a car, and we'd drive to Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm supposed to be here. So if you all will stay with me for a minute, I'm going to, oh, and Terry, I just wanted to tell you that I thought about this last night, and my handkerchief wasn't big enough. So I decided I better bring something bigger because that's the kind of day it's going to be. So, and I'll tell you all, I take this work very serious, but one thing you'll learn is that I don't take myself serious. This is about the work. So hang in there with me. And Terry, I am going to be using this today. I know it. Yeah, so let me start with some of these comments. I loved what you said, and thank you to each board member that gave what I call testimonial this morning. And I'll start there. I'm going to go here, but I know that you're a stickler for time, but I need you to, this is my one opportunity, so I'm going to take advantage of it. And Bob Spada will tell you, when you got the mic, right? So here we go. Terry, I believe in the parable of talents. And what you've done over these 50 years is about you and the parable of talents. I wish I could have met you sooner. I'm a virtual reality CEO. For my first 6 months, I didn't know who Terry Russell was. And here's why I didn't know. Because Terry was too busy doing the work to be on an ED call that was talk. He's not about the rhetoric. He's about the do. And I'm blessed to meet him right now. So let me keep going, and if you all are hanging there with me, you said some things, and I just want to say, NAMI meets you where you are, not where we want you to be. We meet you where you are. That's what you talked about. The other thing is nothing about us without us. That's it. Nothing about us without us. And I'm very passionate about both of those. And I'll challenge anyone, elected or not, if that's not their tone with us. So let me go ahead with the official comments that I put down. Good morning. I am both honored and humbled to be here, and I'm in awe of every one of you all. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm in awe of you. To your executive director, Terry Russell, and his incredible staff, thank you for the invitation to be with you today. And to the NAMI Ohio board, thank you. And again, your theme is very on point. NAMI Ohio, you are absolutely incredible. The nobility of what you do is the benchmark. And I'll be bragging about you and taking the ideas and the things you're doing to the other states. They're going to get tired of me bringing up NAMI Ohio. But by the way, why reinvent the wheel? If you've got the best, share it with the rest. And that's what I will do. So the other thing that I wanted to say here at the opening is that to our national board members, Judge Joyce Campbell and Tracy Plouck, thank you for your hard work, your continuous engagement, your commitment, your passion, and your support of me as your new leader. I can't do what I'm doing, can't look forward to doing what I'm doing without your leadership and support. So thank you. And thank you, Tracy. To our past national board members, Bob Spada and Gloria Walker, thank you. Thank you for your support. To my friend and your partner and one of your sponsors, and also thank you to the sponsors. This can't happen without the sponsors. But to my friend and your partner, Rick Keller, CEO of PEGS Foundation, thank you, Rick. So now let's see if I can get to these slides, because I'm not the greatest with the PowerPoint in terms of wanting to bore you. So I want to make sure that there's something that is really of value, and I'm having to look over to see it. So let's see if we can get it going. There's a piece here that I want you to see. You're reading the slide in terms of COVID. I'm a virtual reality CEO, and what I mean by that is that as the judge mentioned, I started right before COVID, and we've been in isolation for the last few years. We see what COVID has done. And, you know, one of our colleagues, Rick Keller, and I on this CEO Alliance group, he's coined the phrase, we have a new generation. We have the COVID generation. And that is from the parents to the young people. And that COVID generation is what you're seeing here. I'll keep going, and I promise, Terry, I'll be wrapping up shortly. We have a database at NAMI National for every state. And in that database, we keep the numbers. And here are the numbers that we have for the state of Ohio. And Terry, you can get with me later on anything that's inaccurate there. But here are the numbers. And we collect this through a statistical site that we have. And I just wanted you to see them, because this is what you are impacting. When I was at the National Association of Counties, one of the things that I had the opportunity to do is to actually visit jails across the country, from the Twin Towers in LA County to Coconino County in a small rural place, meet with the sheriff there, to Cook County on 3 visits. My last visit to Cook County, I was in the women's section of the jail, and as I was leaving, one of the women asked me, was I going over to the men's section? I told her I was, and she asked me if I would do her a favor. And I said, if I can, I will. She said, would you tell my son hello? Our work is critically important, and we know inherently what this means in terms of mental illness and how it is recognized at the back end. We got to do early intervention. So we don't, and our counties many times spend a lot of their money on the back end and follow the money. We need them to spend the money on the front end. So with that said, let me show you something. What this is here showing you is our helpline. We've seen statistics in our helpline year over year. We've grown our helpline. It's now from, when I first started, it was 10 to 6. It's now 10 to 10. We've increased the number of volunteers with lived experience that are working on our helpline by 40 people. And we've also put the helpline number up in the cloud so that our volunteers are not tethered to a phone in a brick and mortar facility. They can work from anywhere. So, and what I'd love to see is us to be able to do it 24/7. So that's a hope. Anxiety and depression, suicidal ideation, the numbers have gone up tremendously. Over 70% increase from 2020 to 2021 in calls about anxiety and depression, looking for resources. Suicidal ideation have gone up over 140, 150%. I think it's even further than that. I can't see the slide. But now what I want to do is I want to show you this. Something else we did is that NAMI National, and as I leave the stage, I want you to be proud. I want you to have pride in NAMI National in terms of what we're doing. And if not, you make sure you let me know. dgillison@nami.org, and that's with 2 L's and 2 I's. So let me come back to this. About 18 months ago, we wanted to be more nimble. We wanted to be Terry-like. So what we did is we created task forces, youth and young adult task force, a justice task force, a data task force. And what we wanted to be able to do is to respond to what we were starting to see. And what we started to see in the youth is this COVID generation. So with this task force, we sent out a call to action and an application. And in 30 days, and this is for young adults to come and work with NAMI National and have their voice at the table to influence what our work would be for 12 months. So we gave 10 young people stipends to be with us for the next 12 months. We got 740 applications in 30 days. Young people care. I'm going to move along here.
1 in 6 youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental health condition each year, and 50% of youth don't get treatment. We want to end the silence, so you're not afraid to speak up.
Mental health is health. Know the signs.
Know you are not alone.
Know that people care.
And that we all have the power to end the silence.
For more resources, you can always go to NAMI.org.
What do you think? So this was without some of our young people, and it's what we call our sizzle reel. Who we are, what we do, why we do it, and for whom we do it. Let me see if I can keep going in this. I'm almost done, Terry. I think he's looking at his watch. I'm trying to move this along. 988. It's coming in 64 days. In those 64 days, that launch happens on July 16th. What will our communities look like? We know what the purpose of 988 is. It's reimagine crisis response. Reimagine our loved ones getting a different response than the one that some have received. What we also have to challenge, and I want to congratulate NAMI Ohio because, you know, you have done more in terms of crisis intervention training programs around the state with more than 14,000 police officers and over 5,000 others, dispatchers and court security guards, have received CIT training. Congratulations. I bring it up because 988, we don't want to bet the ranch on 988 on July 16th. The vision of 988 it's incredible. It's going to be outstanding. It is going to take time to build it out. So we need to run on parallel tracks and do both and, not either or. And don't bet on 988 being the solution on July 16th of 2022. It is wonderful when we talk about, you know, someone to answer the call, someone to respond, and a place to take them. But that will take infrastructure. And it all starts, though, as Bob Spader will tell you, with leadership. Walking the halls and getting the leaders to understand what it needs to happen. Because once you get the money, then it's about the work. And that work starts with leadership. So we want to be at the table helping with that leadership. Everybody okay? Yeah. All right, good. I needed to ask you all because Terry's getting ready to kick me off the stage. Sorry, I can't see this slide here. Okay, so you see what this says in terms of this, so let me move ahead. All right, so does anyone have an Apple device? I know the judge said silent them. Do you know how to use Siri? Okay, have you ever said into Siri, I'm feeling depressed? Why don't you try it and tell me what happens? Anyone want to do it? Or if I can get my phone and do it if you don't want to do it. Just do Siri and say, I'm feeling depressed and see what happens. I'm sorry, what'd you say? Not only does it take you to NAMI.org, but you talked about peer-to-peer. You spoke about peer-to-peer. It also says, would you like me to connect you with a family or friend? So it leads off with that, and it says, I'm sorry how you're feeling, but if you'd like me to connect you. So it understands you are not alone. And so, everybody okay? I'm getting nervous up here. So I'd like to show you one more piece, if I might. It's not that long, but it's important that you see this.
When I went to, oh my goodness, let me just go straight in. When I went to my first support group meeting, I recognized that I wasn't alone and that there were other people who were like me who were engaging their own mental health recovery. And they welcomed me in with open arms and there was no pretense. I was like, wow, I have a place that's mine that I can attend and I don't have to feel like I have to walk this journey out by myself anymore. Or people judging me or being misunderstood. I finally felt understood.
So I joined the Young Adult Support Group and was just like so open about who they are and so welcome and accepting. And I finally found a group where I felt seen and heard and where I felt capable of like exploring myself and encouraged to really share what was going on in my life. And I mean, that group got me through a lot.
I'm very glad to see that NAMI focuses on reaching out to diverse communities in a culturally humble, culturally competent, and linguistically appropriate way, because this is very important to our community.
So with NAMI, I've gotten involved by becoming a facilitator for NAMI en Español, for their family support group and the connections group, because I think the Latin community really needs more resources when it comes to learning about mental illness and mental health. And I think they do a great job of bringing that awareness to these communities.
All my life, I've never had access to a support group. It's not common. I've never seen something like this before. So this is like my first time having a support group where you have like minds, where you have people where you can freely pour out your mind, freely, be vulnerable and say, okay, this is what I'm facing. And you have people who would not stigmatize you, people who would not talk down at you. Having that space of people who would listen, where you can share, it's awesome.
Being in a support group for veterans and leading it, being a veteran, it's nothing like that. Because we are such a close-knit community. Where else can you go to? Who else can you go to talk about surviving being shot by a sniper other than another veteran? To have somebody in front of you who understands what you're going through and not only understand, but can talk to you about their experience, it's counseling on both ends. And that's what NAMI is all about, that lived experience to be that support system for other people.
We have a support group for both our loved ones. It's called NAMI Connections, peer-led, as well as for caregivers. And I leave that support group every week inspired by watching the way people are getting through all of this.
When I came to NAMI, found a family in NAMI, in the support group where I learned so much. And I've been involved ever since, now trying to give back and volunteering myself.
When I first started down my journey of treating my substance abuse and disorders and mental health issues, I sat quietly in the room. I sat in the back, didn't want to talk to anybody until I got to a NAMI Connections group. I sat down in that Connections group and I felt safe. I felt secure. I felt accepted. And I felt like I was with family and friends. And I finally started opening up and speaking. And it makes me want to cry. Because that's so important to have that safe space where you can discuss all these things that you have to be a strong man and deal with, but you can come into the safe space and get it off your chest. And it's not eaten away. It's not taken home to the family. And you can't put a price on that.
What do you think? That's your video. It's for you.
When I went to, oh my goodness.
Let's see if I can get past this now because we have one last slide. Rick is West Point Special Forces. That young man was U.S. Army. He was shot by a sniper at 17. He joined the Army out of Rochester, New York at 17, was shot at 19, and joined NAMI after his recuperation when he came back to the United States. So let me get to the very last slide, Mr. Russell. And I don't know how good I'm going to be on this. If you all bear with me for a second, the last asset I wanted to share with you all is that NAMI is going to have its first book. It's called You Are Not Alone. This is not the book. This is not the book. This is what's called a blad, is what the industry calls it, but it is a teaser. But it's titled You Are Not Alone: The NAMI Guide to Navigating Mental Health, with advice from experts and wisdom from real individuals and their families. Over 130 interviews in speaking to families who has a loved one with psychosis, a loved one with all of the serious mental illness we can think of. So a family that is navigating that can get this book, and they can actually see the experience. They can walk that experience. And then it's going to have, in the back of the book, it will have a Q&A for the most serious of illnesses. That's going to be out in bookstores in September. So NAMI's values are fairness, compassion, inclusion, empowerment, and hope. And right now, we have a lot of people that are feeling hopeless. NAMI gives them hope and makes them hopeful. Thank you for everything you do. And now what I want to do is close by doing the following. And I'm asking my mom to support me, to keep me strong while I do this. And what brought me to this work is I lost my contemporary, and we grew up together. And we were the oldest, and we were the designees that we were going to do for our young cousins and sisters and brothers to be the first to go to school and go to college and that kind of thing. She lost her life to suicide. And the ripple effect to our family, my aunt and uncle, and my uncle's heart broke, and he never was the same. They didn't know anything about NAMI. My mission is to spread the word about NAMI as far as I can, because had they known about NAMI, it could have been different. It could have been different for the standpoint of the ripple effect for my aunt and uncle in terms of people to talk to, people to connect to. So thank you all for what you do. In terms of what I want to do now is, how do you acknowledge a man who has given his life to helping our most vulnerable, our minimized, our invisible? You know, Terry, I don't know what to say. I would just tell you that there's an Andrew Carnegie quote. I listen to what men say, but I watch what they do. There's nobody like you, man. Nobody like you. And I will close by just saying that, you know, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Terry knows a hell of a lot, but he cares more. And he's demonstrated that over 5 decades. And NAMI National would like to recognize you. And we have something for you. And this is a great segue, because it's important that we have and I'm sure he's received so many different awards, but we have a crystal clock for you, a Waterford clock. And it says, in appreciation of Terry Russell, recognizing 50 years of service to people living with mental health conditions in Ohio and beyond. Last thing I'll say is this. This is about leadership, tone, and execution. If you remember nothing else I've said, leadership, tone, and execution. And this guy executes. And his leadership and his tone has just been fantastic. And I'll put this down here, and I'll get out of the way. And I don't know that I'll get invited back, Luke. I took too long.
I want to tell Katie, we may give 2 or 3 of these awards after lunch. Dan, thank you so much. And that gave us, I think, all encouragement that things are good in Washington and the future's bright. I wasn't going to cry. And you already made me cry. So it's going to be hard getting through this presentation, because it's a tough presentation to make, probably my last one. Because it was my last one, I decided that I'm going to be very aggressive, assertive, demanding, something that I just haven't done before, and I just feel it's time. Right, Tracy? I've never, wherever Tracy is. But after careful consideration, I decided I'd make this presentation will be very mellow. It reflects how people within the system have impacted me, and how each of you in this audience can feel what I'm feeling today by just showing kindness to those we serve. While driving down the freeway last Friday afternoon, I saw a big semi, and on the side of it, it says, "Love lasts forever." Big letters. And when thinking about my 50 years of working in the mental health system, I have always said that I'm the one who's been blessed for working in this field for this long. What about everybody else? My interactions with those we've served, the loved ones that have most treasured memories are with you. I'm the one that's blessed. Most of you know my story about my brother, 15 years older than me, and how mental health held my home hostage growing up. However, it was my love for my brother that brought me into this field. I just got out of the military in 1969. I was a pretty angry fella. But after graduating from The Ohio State University, I was convinced, like so many others here in the audience, that people like us can help, and people can recover, people can live quality lives that didn't have to have brothers and sisters and mothers go through what my family went through. That was my goal. You know, I've had a lot of friends that are governors, and my parents knew Governor Rhodes. So he got me a job at the Ohio Department of Mental Health. After a few years there, I went to the Madison County Mental Health Center in London, Ohio, a little small community. It was my first experience of actually meeting people living with these illnesses, and there were so many. I remember one person, Nadine. She had 4 children, and her husband had just got out of the military. She was very, very troubled. She used the mental health center almost every day trying to get somebody to help her with her demons. One day she came into the Madison County Hospital where we were located yelling, "I need to talk to Terry. I need to talk to Terry." The security forces brought her into my office. After it was all over, I said, "This is not going well. There's something here we have to do." And we couldn't get her into a hospital then. Just couldn't do it. That weekend, her husband called me and said Nadine had overdosed at a party and died. I haven't thought about that much, but that was my first funeral I went to for someone that I cared about because of their mental illness in the system. And unfortunately, I've gone to hundreds and hundreds of funerals since. In 1976, I became the executive director of the Clark County Mental Health Board in Springfield, Ohio. I was 29 years old. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I remember knocking on the door, and this secretary of mine, Dixie Higgins, who became a second mother to me, I said, "Dixie, what am I going to do? How do I do this?" During my 22 years as the board director, we merged with Greene County, and then we merged with Madison County. And I have scars on my back from the change that was made because of those 2 mergers. But today, people don't remember there was a Greene County board. They don't remember there's a Madison County board. There's just the Greene Clark Madison County board. And I know people in those communities are better off today than they were. And I just want to give you one example of that. When I was merging with the Greene County, it was when we were closing our state hospitals. We needed a place for people to go. I convinced the Greene County Board to buy a big house in Yellow Springs, Ohio. And it's a beautiful house. Could handle 16 people. We had the state hospital employees run it. It was called SOS, State Operated Services, and they ran it. But we bought it. $198,000 in 1988. I thought the board was going to, when I proposed that, they were going to kick me out of Greene County. But we bought that facility, and then I went over to the Dayton State Hospital and interviewed all the clients that were going to go into that facility from the state hospital. And by the way, they'd been there 20, 30 years. They were institutionalized. They were scared to death of what's going to happen when they got back into the community. And I went in, and I'll never forget John. And I looked at John, and I said, "John, you going to be okay leaving here and going to Yellow Springs?" He says, I don't know, and he didn't say much. And I says, "I tell you what do you need to make you happier in Yellow Springs?" And he said, "I need a rocking chair." So I said, "I need a rocking chair." On the way home, I went to Cracker Barrel. I bought one of those rocking chairs. There was a big porch on the front, and I put that on the porch, so when he got there, he had his rocking chair. About 3 years later, I was driving from Springfield over to Xenia and went through Yellow Springs, and I didn't go through it very often. I said, "I'm going to drive by the house." 3 or 4 years later, drove by. John was sitting on the porch, rocking in his rocking chair. Love lasts forever. There are a couple other stories that I have to tell you about Springfield. One of my clients, Michael Jones, was very tough. I know, look over here. Michael Jones was had a tough upbringing. He was trouble with the law and was really trying to get his life back together. Michael loved to dress up. He would walk the streets of Springfield every day, miles and miles, holding his briefcase and dressed up. He liked me, and I was always the first one at the office in Springfield, and he would be sitting there waiting for me, and we'd go into my office and have coffee. And Mike and I became very close. I was emptying out my closet one day, and I had a bunch of sports coats and ties. And I decided I'm going to take those and give them to Michael. And for the next 2 years, every day, Michael would come in with one of my sports coats and one of my ties. Unfortunately, a few years ago, Michael passed away. At the funeral, Michael's wife, who's here today, I think, is Michael's wife here? Stand up. A godsend. Right here is a godsend to Michael, my friend. But at the funeral, Michael's wife came up to me and showed me a picture, and it was me and Michael shaking hands in front of my office. Every time I get into the story, I'm going to cry. And she said Michael had this picture on his dresser next to the bed. Love lasts forever. The final story of Springfield was there was a gentleman who looked just like Santa Claus, heavyweight, white beard. And I was into housing then, and the board bought a house next door, and we had 4 apartments in it. And Bob lived in one of those houses, and every morning, winter, summer, he would sit out on the picnic table. And as I drove in, I'd wave, and sometimes he'd wave back. Other times I'd wave, and he'd turn his head like he didn't see me. And other times, and most of the times, he gave me the finger. One day, Bob came into my office with a can of off-brand coffee. Terry, give this to someone else who needs it more than me. Nobody needed it more than Bob. When I was leaving the NAMI the board office for the last time to come to NAMI, I got in my car and I looked, and here comes Bob kind of running down as good as he could down to my car, and I thought he was going to say goodbye to me. I got in my car, rolled the window down, and I thought he was going to say goodbye. He looked at me and he says, "Go Michigan." Love lasts forever. It was then that God put his hand on my shoulder and told me to go to NAMI. The NAMI board of directors hired me, but they didn't know they were in receivership. I laugh about it now, but they couldn't pay me. I didn't know what to do, so then as a businessman from Cincinnati who was on the board of directors, came in that day and handed me a check for $50,000. That still wasn't enough. So I called Mike Hogan, Director of the Department of Mental Health, and he gave us an allocation that saved us. Mike's here today. Mike, stand up. Where's Mike? You saved NAMI Ohio. You made this what it is today, or we wouldn't have been open. We'd have closed our doors. That grant enabled us to become one of the largest, if not the largest, state affiliate in the country over the past 24 years. When I gave the eulogy to Herb Reisenfeld, the man in Cincinnati that gave him the money, I talked about the love of him and his son. His son was very ill, and Herb would move from state to state, following a psychiatrist from Arizona to Idaho to Colorado because he felt the psychiatrist was helping his son. Again, love lasts forever. When Herb passed away, he was a pretty sad man. He just had a sadness about him when we go together places. And the last time I saw Herb, he said, "Terry, the last 5 years, I don't know that I could have lived without NAMI Ohio." That's how much it meant to him. I think that's so special. Looking over the past 24 years, all the people through Ohio that I've worked with, especially those living with mental health and those with their loved ones, I have had the opportunity to interact with some of the most incredible individuals in the planet. Honest to God, I've been so blessed. The Walkers, Tom and Ann, the stories that I can tell you about them, but the most gentle, nice people that I've ever met in my life. The Polzers, I'm going to miss people, the Spadas, Jack and Ann Sherman, on and on and on. I had never met the Knapps until they called me to get help for their son. When I called the hospital where he was, they promised me they would not release him until they were a good place for him to be. Again, I'd never met the Knapps, but I was emailed all days about 2 weeks before, back and forth. I'm not going to go to the details of what happened. Most of you know that story. But on a Saturday morning, 11 o'clock, I was at a funeral in Worthington, their son's funeral. And I was in a reception line. And when I introduced myself to Dan Knapp, he grabbed me and hugged me. And he said, "Terry, I tried everything. I tried everything." But since that, the Knapps have come on my board. Both of them have been on my board at different times. They committed themselves to helping other families so that they didn't have to go through the pain that they've gone through. Love lasts forever. Most recently, I got to know Don and Jeff Heck from Mansfield. They lost their daughter to mental illness at age 33. 8 days later, they started the 33 Forever Foundation. It is going to be a very significant force in mental health here in Ohio. They are very special people, and I'm blessed to get to know them. Julie Hammond's on my board, who lost her son to mental illness. And when she speaks at our board meeting, people listen. Why do I specifically mention these three couples? Because of their heartbreak. Love lasts forever. Gloria Walker and her son Charles. And Charles, you here? Where's Charles? He just walked out. Gloria's on the board of directors when I was hired 24 years ago. I became very close to Charles. And I was going to say, if he was here, it's people like Charles that have enriched my life. I always tell the story, and I'm going to tell it again, Gloria, that shows where NAMI, Ohio has come from, where we were, where we've come from. Before I came to NAMI, Ohio, she would come to a board meeting to Columbus from Cincinnati. They put her up in a hotel on South High Street that charged by the hour. Gloria, I think we've come a little bit up from that day. I'll never forget the day I was at the State House in front of the Senate Finance Committee and advocating for mental health parity, and Senator White, who didn't like me, was the chairman. I got up to do my presentation, and Senator White says, "Russell, do you have any of your members with you to testify?" And I told him I did. And he said, "I don't want to hear from you. I've heard from you. Let me hear from the family members." He thought he was hurting me. I loved it. I didn't want to testify anyway in front of him. So Harvey Snyder, an attorney from Cleveland who had a son who's been ill for years and years and years, told his story of why parity insurance was so important. Senator Bob Spada was a member of that committee in the Senate, looking down at Harvey and said, "I live near you, and I also have a son being helped by the system." The two of them talked back and forth at a hearing, state Senate hearing, back and forth. And before long, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. I believe that interaction is why that parity bill passed. Two fathers committed to their sons, made it happen. Love lasts forever. A year ago, and this is going to be one of the most tough one for me to talk about. A year ago, a tragedy happened here in Columbus. A friend of mine, a long-term member of Franklin County NAMI, taught in my conference room the family course with his wife. He and his wife want to do anything to help their daughter. Their untreated, and I repeat, untreated daughter came over to their house in Upper Arlington for dinner and shot the father and the mother. The father passed away, and the mother spent weeks in the hospital. 2 days after the shooting, the father's sister called me and asked me if I could help the family, and especially her niece. They didn't want her to hurt anybody else, but they didn't want her to be treated bad. And I promised to get her into a state hospital. I told the sister that I was going over to the governor's house the following week to talk to him about mental illness. And I said, would you come with me? And that's 2 days after her brother was shot. And she says, yes, I will, Terry. We walked into the governor's house, and the entire cabinet was there. Everybody. The sister told her story, emotional story, and you could hear a pin drop. When she was done, the governor took her hand and said, we will fix this. Because the mother was in the hospital and the funeral was postponed for a few months, it was held in a beautiful church up in Upper Arlington on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. As I waited in line to take my seat, I looked, and walking in the door was Governor Mike DeWine and his entourage. After I was seated, I went over to the governor and I said, Governor, I told him how comforting his presence would be to the family and how appreciative NAMI Ohio was that he cared that much. Throughout this tragic story, my representation of NAMI was directed because of love of this family and their involvement. Love lasts forever. There are so many other board members that I'd love to tell stories about. I'd like to recognize all of the professionals out there who care so much about those we serve. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about my love for the Adult Care Facility Association and the board. I started that thing in 2000 because people living in these homes, they have nobody else but these homes. I've got to recognize one person. Is Fraz Betts here? I haven't seen Fraz, but is she here? Where? Stand up, Fraz. Fraz Betts is a home operator from Toledo. My brother had a brain aneurysm and was up in intensive care in Akron, and my wife and I went up. He'd been in a coma for almost 7 days. My wife and I got back in our car and were driving home, and I got a call from Fraz and her spiritual advisor. And quite honestly, I could not stop the two from praying for my brother for the next 50 miles down the road. The next day, my brother came out of the coma and is doing very well, and he'll be here today. Fraz Betts, you're the best human being I've ever met. And what you've done for all the people, she's got 15 people living in her homes for the last 30 years. And most of them have lived there that long. You know, why am I telling these stories? I'd like to have a dime for every time I've walked into the State House, the Rife Center, or the Rhodes Center. I'd be a rich man if I received a dime for every meeting I've attended over the past 50 years. But looking back, it wasn't the meeting or the testimonies. It was the people I met that made this job wonderful. Many of you are sitting in the audience today. From the bottom of my heart, I cannot thank you enough. For all of you who in years to come will be able to celebrate 50 years, take my advice. The only reason we're here is for those living with mental health and their families. That's the only reason we're here. It's not for the system. It's not for me. It's for those people living with mental illness and their families. Be kind. Be kind to them. Be kind to them, because quite frankly, nobody else is. Each of you have an opportunity to be a friend, to give a hug, or just recognize those individuals living with mental illness. Kindness and caring may be more important than anything else we do in this system. Remember, love lasts forever. I'm going to end this by telling a story. NAMI Ohio is really a small not-for-profit organization trying to speak on behalf of citizens. But I can tell you that it's more than that. And I think you heard from some of my board members today. The NAMI Ohio board members have given me the opportunity to meet people for the first time for years and years. 27 of our 28 board members attended our first meeting at Deer Creek in August. 27 to 28 for Friday night and Saturday. That's how committed. 15 visitors. 2 days prior to the meeting, one of my board members' son was just released from a year in jail and state hospital. The 27-year-old man was in attendance. The failure of the mental health system in this particular case troubles me more than any that I've ever seen. The day before the crisis occurred, I was promised he would get help. He was ignored, and the young man and his family spent a year of hell as a result. The failure of the system is something NAMI Ohio addresses every day. It does not always make us the most popular organization, but I'm convinced today that when people get mad at us, we know that we're doing it for the right reason. During the August board meeting, we were discussing a number of very difficult issues. On 2 or 3 occasions, this young man asked if he could have input. He gave so much insight. At the end of the meeting, we have a tradition at NAMI Ohio at the board meeting that we go around and board members can say what they want about the meeting, about their lives, whatever's going on. When we got to the young man's mother, she said that all the issues and recommendations made during the 2-day meeting were so raw because they affected her and her family. At that time, her son stood up and said, "I love you, Mom." So many of my board members saw that one statement as thanking them, thinking about their loved ones or themselves and their loved ones. It was a love you for everybody in that room. And I'm leaving here today. I love all of you. Thank you.
Well, once again, Russell, you know, the hardcore, hard-ass judge, and you make her cry like a baby at every meeting. Damn. Okay, take a deep breath. NAMI Ohio receives calls every day from all over Ohio and beyond. We try to find services, and quite frankly, there's times we can't. A few months ago, Laura Papalia called, and like always, Terry took the call. Today, we're going to hear from Laura and Mark Mayle, who stepped forward to save Laura's brother's life.
Good morning. Ooh, where's the clicker? What do you need? How do you need the clicker? Oh, what? Pictures up on the thing? Is this it right here?
Time out for station identification.
I think this is it right here.
Yeah, I think that's it. Can you see it?
I don't know if I have to click or not. I'm here to share a story about my older brother, Zach. Zach suffers from schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type, which he started showing signs for when he was 16 years old. He is turning 43 next month, and thanks to NAMI Ohio, Zach is currently living in a group home, getting the specialized care he needs to live as much of a life as he possibly can. When Zach was officially diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder back in 2002, he was placed into a group home, and from that time had lived at 4 group homes over the last 19 years. Our family was very lucky. There was always a place for him to live, and we didn't have to face the reality of what so many other families deal with when trying to find appropriate, permanent, supportive housing for their mentally ill loved ones. In late August of last year, my family's luck ran out. The group home that Zach had been living in for over 9 years was shut down by the state of Ohio. Shortly before the home was permanently closed, Zach had an episode and was sent to a behavioral hospital for a few days. By the time he was discharged, his longtime home, one of the very few consistent and stabilizing forces in Zach's life, was shut down. His caseworker was able to find him another nearby group home to move into, but that only lasted 24 hours, when the group home owner decided Zach was too erratic to live there. With no other options, he was sent to stay at a homeless shelter in Portsmouth, Ohio. It didn't go well. After he was kicked out of the homeless shelter, he had another short stay at a behavioral hospital, but when it came time for him to be discharged, we were advised there was no other place for Zach to go. He was then sent up to a behavioral hospital in Franklin County, closer to myself and our mother. When that short stay was over, the hospital caseworker found a group home in the area for him to move into, but this home did not meet the needs of someone like Zach, which is why he walked out a week later and was not welcome to return. By this time, Zach had now fallen into a relentless cycle that I undoubtedly believe to be a blueprint of our state's disorganized and undeveloped supportive housing system for the severely mentally ill. Here's how this cycle works. 1, untreated mentally ill person ends up at a behavioral hospital, oftentimes through police intervention. 2, they stay for as long as insurance will pay them, which is typically around 5 days. 3, due to lack of appropriate options, the hospital discharges them to inadequate housing situation, which fails. Repeat 1 through 3 until they are permanently homeless, incarcerated, or dead. While all of this was going on, I wasn't directly involved yet. Our 75-year-old mother, who had always facilitated Zach's mental health care and is also his legal guardian, was the one communicating with the powers that be, trying to filter the information, understand exactly what was happening and why it was happening. Mom, can you stand up? Everyone say, "Hi, Lois." My sister and I would get updates from our mother.
Mom has something to say.
Thank you so much to Terry Russell and Mark Mayle. I talked to Zach yesterday. He just about sounds like the old Zach to me. He wants smokes and money. Seeing these little kid pictures. When she was 3 and he was 5, and he did something she didn't like, she would put her head down, 3 years old, and just plow right into his midsection. I have no doubt she would do it today.
Thank you, Mom. My sister and I would get updates from our mother, and each time the updates would be more and more worrisome. But she stayed calm and kept reiterating that someone was in the background working on Zach's movement. But his housing situation had always worked out for us before. Why would it be any different now? In reality, no one was working on it. Zach didn't even have a mental health service provider at this point. Within 24 hours of walking out of that group home, Zach was picked up by the police and made his way back to a hospital, following that relentless cycle. For the next 2 months, he was in and out of emergency rooms, behavioral hospitals, homeless shelters, which he got kicked out of, picked up by police multiple times, sleeping on the streets of downtown Columbus, checked into hotels, which he got kicked out of, until finally, a few days after Christmas, he ended up in Newark, Ohio, at our mom's house. When we found out that Zach was staying at our mom's house, we knew our family was in a really bad situation. I remembered conversations I had with Lois about how exhausted she was from moving Zach around for the past couple of months. There was absolutely no way she could handle the physical, mental, and emotional demands of caring for him 24 hours a day. We didn't know how long it would take to find new permanent housing, and we were genuinely scared for her and for Zach. On Monday, January 3rd, I directly intervened. I spent about 50 working hours over the next 2 weeks making phone calls that generally led me nowhere. I persistently emailed, faxed, researched, and worked my way backwards to find out what happened that led us to this point, and some things are still unclear. Almost every entity involved in the mental health system I had talked to, but even with all that work put in, I haven't really moved the needle yet, until I sent an SOS email to NAMI, Ohio. 2 days later, on a Friday, I was on the phone with Terry Russell for about 45 minutes, And when that call was over, it was the first moment of a real hope that I felt for my family in months. And the first moment of real hope I felt for Zach. Terry vowed to get Zach placed the next week, and I just knew this is the person I need to be talking to. This guy, this organization is going to help us. The following Monday, just like he said he would, Terry connected me with a group homeowner, Mayle, who has experience caring for schizoaffective people. Mark agreed to come down to my mom's house and meet and assess Zach as a potential resident because he would soon have a spot opening up. I told him that was great, except Zach was no longer at her house. That very morning around 7 a.m., I got a distress call from Lois that Zach was uncontrollably angry and raging after staying up most of the night. I made a couple calls and was able to get the police out to her house with a mental health service officer, and by 11 a.m., Zach was off to the local hospital. That same night, Zach was transported to a behavioral hospital in Columbus. A few days later, Mark came down, met him, and agreed Zach could come live at his group home. But Mark needed more time than the hospital was willing to give us. They wanted to discharge Zach the following week in the middle of a snowstorm about 5 days earlier than Mark could let him move in, all because insurance would quit paying them. Once again, Terry, Russell, and NAMI, Ohio saved the day, and Zach was able to stay the 5 extra days that Mark needed. On Monday, February 4th, Mark made the 2.5-hour trip to Columbus and picked Zach up from the hospital. It actually happened. Zach moved in and has been living there ever since. Even now, my sister, mother, and I will occasionally make a comment that we are in disbelief that Zach got back into an appropriate group home. Each time we talk to Zach, he sounds better and better, as my mother said. We know that Zach is in the best place possible for someone like him, and I know without a doubt he would not be there if it were not for the amazing work performed by Terry, Russell, and NAMI, Ohio. Thank you.
As you know, NAMI, Ohio has been a rather loud voice. What would you like to do, Mr. Russell? Is Mark here?
Yeah, right there.
Well, I didn't even say, come on up. Thank you for what you do.
Good morning. My name is Mark Mayle. I want you to imagine with me, if you will, a scenario in which all people are treated with dignity and respect, no matter gender, race, political stance, or religion. Let's add diagnosis and illness to that. Surely those who suffer with a physical ailment, the weak, the frail, or are somewhat treated with dignity and respect in 2022. For instance, David has heart trouble, developed an infection causing sores all over his legs. Treated at a hospital, transferred to a nursing home where he receives care for his ailments. Regains strength, receives therapy, and is ready to return home. But 3 days prior to discharge, the caregiver is notified to ensure that he has all that he needs, meds, medical equipment, etc. Case manager is contacted, and he or she makes the arrangements for transportation to allow him to be transported back home and follow up with appointments. But he will need to be closely monitored because he's not back to his baseline. From start to finish, David is treated with dignity and respect. Another example is Tommy. He has chronic schizophrenia. Confused, frequently struggles to stay in reality. Unable to manage medications, can cook barely, or manage his money. He's been living in an apartment by himself with little to no support because he's unable to be taken care of by his family. He walks the busy streets and he begins to cause a disruption. Ends up in the hospital. He started on a new medication and is being discharged in just a few days. But he is not stable and his meds have not reached a therapeutic level. It is determined that he can't go back home, unable to find a proper placement. The hospital has scheduled for him to go to a homeless shelter. He will be handed his prescriptions, a follow-up appointment, and a cab will take him back there. No support, no safety plan, no plan at all. What are the similarities, I ask? What are the differences in these two situations? They both have illnesses, don't they? They both need help, they both need support, and they both need follow-up care. Who is responsible for Tommy? How could the doctor or the hospital let this happen? They understand that most likely Tommy will be right back. Who's the mental health agency? Did he have a mental health case manager? Why is there no follow-up? What good did the hospitalization even do? Is housing anyone's responsibility? This is only one example of many. Without the help of NAMI, Tommy would have been taken to the homeless shelter, but someone found out and made the call. Why did NAMI have to get involved? What has happened to the system? What has happened to hospital discharge planning, for that matter? Those suffering with mental illness are not getting treated with dignity and respect. And an alarm needs to be sounded. Mental illness should not be treated any differently than heart trouble or any other illness. Would you think so? We would never have sent the one with heart trouble to a homeless shelter. We wouldn't send a Alzheimer's patient there, a developmental disability client there. But it's okay to send a person with chronic persistent schizophrenia that is delusional, confused, and out of touch with reality to a homeless shelter. What is wrong with this picture? We are not working hard enough to find proper placement for these consumers when they are at beds all over Ohio. A cheap hotel or a homeless shelter is never a good option for a person that is suffering from mental illness. Case managers and hospitals need to reach out to their Adams boards for assistance at times. There are resources out there to assist with acute persistent disorders and these types. Mental health boards are able to assist where needed. Is that not why they're even there? If an adult care facility does accept a new consumer from the hospital, often they arrive with no clothing except what they're wearing on their back. No money to help with their needs. Their insurance won't even work. Prescriptions aren't even covered. This just puts the facility in crisis mode. Is there any wonder that facilities are leery to take newly discharged patients from hospitals? A financial burden is put on the facility on day one just to meet the basic needs of an individual. Thank God we do have good people that are out there that choose to treat them with dignity and respect. They work hard to meet their needs. We do have a lot of good case managers, but they have very little knowledge about the resources that are available to them. Another common problem is that there is no follow-up care with mental health consumers when they are moving from a home due to closure or relocating. The mental health agencies need to ensure that they have a secure placement before discharging them. There is poor follow-up from case managers, phone calls are not returned, and many times they know very little about the very client that they serve. Referrals were not made to new mental health agencies. No appointments were scheduled. There's so much follow that should have been done before discharging them to ensure that the individual was in good hands and that their care was not interrupted. They decompensate while a caregiver is struggling to get them help and they end up back in a hospital. A crisis should not have developed due to poor planning. We have a revolving door system that Laura described so well. The question here is, what is the responsibility of the mental health system, the boards, the agencies? Why does NAMI have to intervene so intensely many times in these cases? Again, is housing anyone's responsibility? Our mental health system needs some work, friends. There's an example after example I could give you, but time does not allow. I can say that we need solutions, and we need them now. So what is the answer? We need a more collaborative, systematic approach for our consumers. A system that does not just talk about recovery, but that understands together as a team we need to address with the mentally ill. A team that puts action into getting things done. Education needs to be done on all levels regarding where these clients can get resources when they are in crisis mode. Families, hospitals, social workers, mental health agencies, case managers, adult care facilities need to know where they can go to get help when they need it. Without it, the rest of the puzzle makes no sense, and recovery is not the goal. We need an awareness campaign to stop contributing to the problem of homelessness. We will never have a perfect system, I understand that, but we can have a much improved one. Together we can do what we should do for every person that needs health care assistance, and that is to be treated with dignity and respect for all people, no matter their diagnosis or their illness. In conclusion, I want to share a short story with you about a monkey and a fish. One day, a monkey was jumping around from tree to tree when he stopped on a branch that was overlooking the river. He began to notice a fish was squirming beneath him, trying to get himself unstuck from some vegetation in the water. The monkey thought to himself, surely I can help this little fish today. He reached down, he rescued the fish from the entrapment, and proudly laid him beside him. The fish died. What can we learn from this? Many of us feel that it is our job to rescue those who suffer from mental illness. And as great as this is, do not let us forget that we are also responsible for taking the time to understand, to listen, and to grasp to what the individual really needs. In the process of trying to save them, we actually may end up harming them permanently. Each and every individual soul deserves our very best. Thank you for letting me share.
So I've been told to announce that the awards will be given after lunch. We're running a little behind Gillison. All right, as I started to say, and I'm going to cut this a little short, and I don't want to short shrift Dr. Wilson. Today we have Dr. Amy Blank Wilson with us. Dr. Wilson is an associate professor and the Prudence F. and Peter J. Meehan Early Career Distinguished Scholar in the School of Social Work at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She is also the co-director of the Tiny Homes Village at the farm at Penny Lane. And today she will share more about that project that fits right in with what we just heard about. Thank you, Doctor. Can you see your slide?
Those are not the right slides.
Uh-oh.
All right, that's probably why they got hurt, but I do have a moment. I'm sorry. Yep, I got it. Okay, hold on.
All right.
You all almost forgot my research.
Well, since she's doing that, I'll give you the little paragraph I had that I wanted to talk about. So we've been a loud voice, some of us louder than others, Mr. Russell, for a community support system for the most severely mentally disabled. One component of a community support system, but maybe the most important, is housing. And later today, we're all going to talk about and hear about a new housing initiative, as you notice the little houses on your tables. We thought that hearing about something that is working would get all of us enthusiastic and open our wallets in moving forward in our advocacy to provide an array of housing throughout Ohio. And I think what Mr. Mayle said is so true. Not what we want to give, but what they need. And I think that's so important. So, you good? Yep. All right. I was the filler.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. It's so wonderful to see so many people in person. While the slides are coming up, and this is a very visual story, that's why I panicked at the thought of a PowerPoint-free area, as we discussed earlier. But the slides will hopefully come up, and it won't be my my class. But you know, 3 things as I'm rambling. One is this is my first in-person presentation in 2 years, so thank you for having me. Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Okay, I can breathe again. And the second is that in the last years, I've received a lot of feedback from my family on my presentation style. And my 80-year-old father called me just this morning to say, talk slower. And but I'm feeling pressed right now because I know I'm what's standing between you and all the other wonderful things. And the last is that this is the first time I've not presented in loungewear in 2 years. So there we go. And that I have a pretty complicated relationship with a clicker. So we're going to see how this works out. All right. So I'm here presenting on behalf of the Tiny Homes team, and you're going to hear a little bit about our journey. Hopefully, it's a story of hope and a couple lessons that we've learned maybe along the way. So at its core, the Tiny Homes team, or the Tiny Homes Village, and you can try to point it back this way. Is this how I do it? All right. Already you're seeing the relationship is not good. So, oh, there we go. Okay. All right. Hopefully it doesn't now just go 10 forward. So, okay. So it all started with a really good idea. And the idea came from XDS Inc., which is a small community nonprofit in North Carolina, Chatham County, North Carolina. And they've been working on affordable housing solutions for people with mental illness for a long time. And they got interested in the tiny homes. And through a lot of hard work and vision, they brought several of its own to help with this project. And here is where we started. Hopefully, we'll see soon. Oh, there we go. Oh, so in the project we're going to talk about, this started with just one phase when I joined, just so you know, and now we're up to, I think, 6 or 7. So it grows. But we had an idea, and then we had to figure out how to do it. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about the conceptual phase of the project, and I'm going to talk about the end, what we're going to do when people are living in them, and give you a brief overview. See, it's just doing its own thing. A brief overview of the middle. So this was a slide I was looking for. So this is where we started. This is about 8 years ago, this is Chatham County, North Carolina, when we said we were going to build a tiny home village for people with serious mental illness here. People were like, that is not a good idea. And as you can see, it looks a little bit out in the middle of nowhere, but XCS had vision. They bought this land at a time where they knew development was coming. And you'll see some slides where we are with construction. Just understand now, this is a hub of activity. It's within walking distance of transportation. There's shops, there's opportunities to work, buy groceries. There's a lot of development that was coming the way of this area, and XCS as a organization saw it, and they bought land cheap. And so now we've been doing our work. And so you're like, what are you doing, Amy? Well, we're building a community of 15 tiny homes, and as part of the community, there'll be a clubhouse, there'll be an outdoor pavilion. It's adjacent to the farm at Penny Lane, which is an alternative therapeutic environment for people with mental illness. So a number of supportive and adjunctive services are offered there. And we're also building a demonstration project, because while we're really committed to building the tiny homes, we want to do it in a way that helps others follow along and learn with us, and maybe use what we have learned. I'm not even sure what slide we're on at this point. Okay. Okay. So I'll do this. Perfect. Okay. Hold. All right. So that's where we started. That was our idea, our big idea, if you will. And what you're seeing here is our model home. So when we first started this in 2015, nobody that we know of was doing this for people serious with mental illness. There were people who were doing this in the homeless world, and we were starting to hear talk about doing this with veterans. But we were one of the first groups to say, what about using tiny homes as a form of affordable housing for people with mental illness? Because that's our challenge, that's our mission. Turns out you can buy a tiny home from Amazon for $200,000. Seriously, True story, you can, but that's not affordable. So our price point for these homes is $50,000. So building these homes for $50,000 a home, that was the challenge. And so our first step to doing this, because we had questions like, is this a form of housing that feels that people with mental illness will want to live in? Because the other principle of our project is that we engage end user feedback in every stage of the design. Because Tava, who's somebody who's worked in the mental health system longer than I, and I've worked in and around it for 30 years, he came to me and he said, I need a researcher on this project because I'm tired of building interventions and then having you come in later to tell me what went wrong and what could have been done better. He said, let's do it together. And let's go to the people who are going to be living in these homes and supporting the people living in the homes and the people providing services, and let's get input so we can do this from the best possible way from the beginning. So with Habitat for Humanity in Chatham County, we built this model home at a county fair, and then we moved it down a dirt road, I'd like to tell you. It was quite an adventure in and of itself. And at the point that this model home was done, I thought I was done. But actually, it was just the beginning. We used this through evaluation to get a lot of feedback that now has informed the design of the community. So one of the things along the way that never ceases to amaze us about this project is how it captures the imagination of others. And our intention was always to do evaluation to inform the design of the homes and communities we were building. And this has been like wildfire. It has taken off. I've presented this work at NIMH. This has been, the work that we've done has been published. And I want to give you just a couple of takeaways of what we've learned, because remember, our principles are how to build these homes in a way that support the health and well-being of residents and that are designed to meet the needs of people with mental health issues. And a couple of the takeaways that we have heard, and there's not going to be any news here for people in this room, people want privacy, they want autonomy, and they want the chance to socialize. And so those became our centering principles in terms of the design. You can go to the next slide. And we noted a couple things that center the designs I'm going to show you. And the one is that so this model home is 326 square feet. So that gives you a sense, all right? People really love that there was a separate bedroom in this home. And they particularly loved that everything was on one floor. Because a lot of people talk to me about seeing a home, the tiny homes, because they're built on permanent foundations, as a place that they could grow old, a place where they could go that could be their home and that they could stay, and that it was their own. So I want you to really hear that the people, at least that we have engaged in terms of end user feedback, they're not joining the tiny home movement. Right? They were glad there weren't lofts. They were glad there weren't some of the flashy things that we see on TV, which I love to watch. I'm addicted to those programs, right? I love it. But what they loved was the accessibility of the home. They talked to me about the grading. They talked to me about the steepness of the stairs, right? Because they look at these homes and they see permanency, right? And the other piece that really came out for us, and you saw it in the title, the first time I heard it, okay, the fifth time I heard it, I paid attention. The 10th time I heard it, I said, people said, do you think this is tiny? You should see where I live now, right? You should see where I live now. And, so on the one hand, we're working with builders who are like, this is too small. This is not livable, right? And on the other hand, we're working with people with lived experience who are like, this is everything, right? So I think that's a very humbling statement. It became one of our centering principles. And we were talking actually with Mark Salzer, who's somebody up in Philadelphia who's a big advocate for community inclusion. He's the one who said to me, took him 3 times till I heard it. I said, tiny homes aren't tiny for people with mental illness. And he goes, they're huge. And I was like, no, I just told you they're not tiny. And then on the 3rd time, I was like, oh, I get what you're saying. So for some people, especially people in need of housing, particularly permanent supportive housing, right, that this is a huge thing. So now we can go to the next slide. So now how are we doing this? Anybody who's thinking about doing this, take a picture of this slide or go to the Corporation for Supportive Housing and get this. That's where we got this from. We were at a conference where they were presenting on this. you'll see my next slide says it takes a village to build a village. It gets building, anybody who's done it, and I've never have, so it's a nutty thing that I'm involved in some ways. But it gets complicated, and you have to be very clear on your roles, and you have to be very clear on who is doing what. And those may be things that get negotiated and renegotiated over time, but this framework has become our organizing and our grounding documents for everything we do. And what I want to point out is that XDS is the owner and the operator. So the university is involved, the Center for Excellence in Community Mental Health is involved, and XDS, the nonprofit, is the owner and the operator. And that's how things have worked well with us. I don't know if anybody's tried to work with a large university on a building project, but you don't want them to lead it. So, and you can see there's a lot of other roles here that are really important. Having, people having a housing service to help with leases and all of those aspects, having a really solid service provider, the community mental health, the Center for Excellence in Community Mental Health on board is critical. But this is our founding document. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So there's our team. This was at the groundbreaking. Another thing we learned is it's really not fun to raise money for what we think of as horizontal construction. So all the building work you have to do before you can build the homes. I'm really tired. I'm really tired of horizontal construction. It started, I'm going to tell you, in March of 2020. Yes, I said it. And yet we're still here. So I have threatened to run away. I have said if one more person talks to me about soil, I'm going to cry. But this is a team. This was December of 2019, back in the happy times. And we were fresh and young. But we had been given $1 million to help deal with a lot of site preparation to move forward from the Oak Foundation, who we're very grateful for. So, and this is the master plan. This is our conceptual plan. This is the fruition of a lot of hard work. This is architects, engineers, sewer specialists sitting around a table with psychiatrists, social workers, psychiatric rehabilitation specialists, really using as our primary sources all the feedback we received from the evaluations we did to figure out how to make this homes work. And that is the dream that we're driving towards. We can go to the next slide. So, but this is what it looks like right now. And believe it or not, this is huge progress. This is what we call the site preparation. So this is when the trucks are starting to come in and we've cleared all the space. I got stuck in the mud twice, had to be rescued, just literally sunk down into the mud because I stood too long. I was a newbie. It had rained. And I talk about this as the leveling up phase because this is where we all had to bring more than we thought we had. And I'm going to say it again, like we all had to bring more than we thought we had. We all had to learn. And it's been a very humbling phase, and we are scheduled to be done with it in August, which I'm very excited about. So we can go to the next page. Yeah. So I know, this is big news. So the other thing that we had to do is, I think you all have heard that the pandemic has affected housing prices, right? You've heard that, right? Yeah, that's been my living nightmare, but it has been. So we've gone through some redesigns. This is what the houses look like now. Really, it's been a process of sticking to the principles and the feedback we received from consumers, and then using this term I've learned, value engineering. Bringing the homes, trying to keep them at the price point. And our principles here are usability, sustainability, and affordability. So, and I'm going to say it again, usability, sustainability, and affordability. So that's what we're working with architects, engineers, everybody's at the table as we do the redesigns. And we're nearing a final model. There's, I don't know, something else is now missing in the supply chain. We can go to the next slide. So there's I think one more round of redesigns going. The next, okay, there we go. I'm having trouble seeing that slide. Okay, you can keep going. Okay, so that's a little look from the inside. You can just see this is a virtual augmented reality. We had to really work to keep people engaged during the pandemic when nobody could come out to the site. So we actually, if you go to our website, which is at the end, there's a virtual 360 tour. And if people like augmented reality, you can load it on your iPhone, cast it, and walk through the house. It's amazing stuff. But that's an example of the home. And then along the way, the thing that we have learned, and this is another lesson I would share, is that once you have infrastructure, once you've done the work to bring the water and the sewer and the roads, sometimes builders show up. They just show up and say, how can I help? Because builders like to build. I've learned builders don't like soil any more than I do. That's a whole nother part of the construction industry, right? So last summer, the NC State School of Design selected us to build this outdoor pavilion, which is the connection between the farm at Penny Lane and the Tiny Homes Village. Is being used all the time now for horticultural therapy, yoga. We have outside community events here. And it was a student-led project where they read the research, they met with people with lived experience, and people, stakeholders at the farm. They designed, in a month and a half, they designed and built that out at the farm. And it was amazing. And that's a $300,000 building that they built for us for $30,000. So we feel very, very blessed. And again, once you start to have momentum and people see that you have permits and you've got the site prep done, it really is impressive what can happen. Go to the next slide. And that's actually the last big announcement I have related to the construction. I'll share with y'all, and I'll hop on a call at 2 today to hear the update. On this theme of, I like to use movie quotes. For a while during the middle, I did a lot of Jerry Maguire, like, show me the money. But now we're to, if you build it, people will come. And so we have our site, we have funding for almost all of the homes, and we've really struggled to engage a builder because it's hard to get builders' attention in this market, right? And so Garmin Homes, which is a builder, they've built about 1,000 homes down in North Carolina. They have signed on to build all 15 homes this fall in what they call a blitz build. So these homes will be built and they will be occupied in early 2023. So that is the most amazing thing for us. I don't know what this fall is going to look like. I'm sure I'm going to get stuck in the mud again, but it's going to be okay. And so we're really excited about where we're going, which leads me to the next slide, which is, I think, what y'all are probably most interested in. I know Katie asked me to talk about what we're going to do when people are living there. Well, for us, I mean, this has been something we've talked about, but it's been a back burner thing as we've been just pushing through, trying to get the money and get through the construction. So I will tell you something we learned early, which is be clear as you can about your eligibility criteria if you ever choose to embark on something like this quickly. We've gotten a lot of media attention over the years, and the need is universal. And people have called us from all over the country asking, if they can live here. It's 15 homes. Right? So that's what we have. We have 15 homes. So being clear internally about that has really helped us set people's expectations, help people have, expectations about this. And then how are we going to select people to live in these 15 homes in a way that is equitable, right? So that's inclusive. Those are our goals. So actually the Center for Corporate Supportive Housing, they actually recommend these resident selection teams. And so that's what we're working on now. It's a little complicated because HIPAA and how inclusive the teams can be, but we're going to push the boundaries on that. So stay tuned. And like Tava and I will not be involved in this. So we firmly believe the people who built the homes that we need to give this to the community. We need to give this to the service providers the people and people with lived experience, to make decisions about who are going to get these homes. So stay tuned, and then we'll go to the next slide. And we're using this is the permanent supported housing model. Everybody will receive a long-term lease. They'll stay as long as they can. We're also talk about using what we call low barrier entry, and then low barrier for living in the community. And we pair that with resident involvement in the running of the community. So I don't have a list of rules. A lot of people want to know like what the rules are going to be. I mean, we have some basic ideas. The rules will be like the rules are for any community, right? But how people live in community with each other, we firmly believe that that's something that the residents should have a say in. And so we're going to have a resident advisory board, and we're going to create a structure for people to be involved in that. But the principles of permanent supported housing are there in conjunction. I mean, this isn't a housing first project, but we firmly believe in that model, So, and then individualized treatment plans. Yes. Excellent question. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, it's one person. And we don't rule out the possibility that a couple may live there. That's a possibility. No, we're not going to be able to have children, no. So thank you for asking that question, yes. So, and we're in intense negotiation with the farmers about letting pets live in the homes. If the farmers get a little, that's a little much, but we're going to work that out. So, individualized treatment plans that are for the person and can change over time. So unlike some of the other models where you'll see if you take the service, you have to, or if you take the home, you have to let these services in, they'll be tailored to the person. Next slide. And then most importantly, fundraising never ends in projects like this. The three thoughts we have here that we've learned so far is we're very thankful early on. One of the grants we received made us do a 25-year, what they call pro forma for the community. So we have a plan for the financial viability for the homes in the community for 25 years. And we know what the rent price, what the rent needs to be, at least, in current day dollars, to support that. And we can do all of this based on how we've raised funds for this and keep people's rent at about the third of their income. So that's our goal. And thanks to all of this, we've been able to achieve it. I think next slide. So we have lots of people. We think of them as investors, people who are investing in the stream with us, who've come along for the ride. And I think there's one more slide. And that is where you can go if you want to follow our progress. And as we learn things, we will put them up. For example, our designs will be up there when they're finalized. So we intend to make this as public and as accessible so other people can take what we've done and use it how it's helpful.
Thank you.